This conference will now be recorded.
Okay, Janice, you can go ahead.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone, and Happy New Year to everyone. We're starting 2021 with our continuous meetings virtually, and our presentation today will be by Bryan Fatka. Bryan, he is the Solution Account Executive for General Code Content Management. And this company provides content and document management automation solutions for the government, education, and private sector businesses. Today, Bryan is going to present to us and pretty much give us guidelines on the roadmap to a paperless office or paperless work environment. Now, this term paperless is not anything new. We've all talked about, for the most part, most of us, including my company, have talked about going to this paperless environment, but I work for a insurance company and we're kind of in the middle. We're half and half. I don't even know if it's half and half, but we have electronic or digital documents and information. Then we still have the paper documents. And that's probably the case for most companies. So today, Bryan, he's going to show us what it is, what we're missing, what it is that we need to do so companies can achieve this goal, hopefully eventually one day, working in a digital paperless environment. So I will, without any further ado, I will, Bryan, allow you to go ahead and take the floor. Can Bryan hear me? See, Bryan, it looks like your mic is on. Hey, Mark, can you figure out anything that's going on with Bryan? Is he talking?
Not sure yet. He was on a minute ago, and it looks like
Maybe we lost him. Yeah.
fell off for a moment. Interesting. He's technically the presenter, and then he disappeared.
Can we send him I'm looking on this. Is there a way you can send him a quick chat?
Yeah, I might have to send an email too. Where'd you go, Bryan?
Okay, so let's give Bryan a couple minutes. He may be having technical difficulties.
Yeah. Where did you go?
Okay, thank you for being patient. We were talking to Bryan just before everyone got on the call, so we at least we know there, he was coming through. So Mark Conrad, our techie person, is looking to connect with him, I believe, through email.
Bye. Okay, can people hear me?
Okay, Brian, I can hear you.
All right, I apologize. My internet must have just crashed, and so I switched to a MiFi device. We're good to go once Mark makes me the presenter again, and I apologize for that, everybody.
There you go.
All right. Does that look, everyone can see and hear now, correct?
Yes, I think we're finally together.
All right. Well, nothing like a little excitement to get things kicked off. So thank you. I heard half of the opening talking about document management, the paperless office, and I'm excited to talk to everybody today. I will say, yes, the paperless office has been talked about for many years, and it's still many years away. However, the moves that we take right now to get us towards that goal are really what matter, and it is an incremental thing. So we'll talk a little bit today at kind of where the industry is, some markers of what's happening, and then at a very high level, we'll get into the broad strokes of what it might take to move down this, the roadmap towards that paperless office. And then towards the end, I'll get into some very specific details about what we can do to take those steps, or at least questions to ask to get us headed down that road. So as they mentioned, my name is Bryan Fatka. I've been working with this type of software for a long time. But I started on the technical side, and I was working with software, building solutions for customers, really doing things from that technical point of view. And then now I'm a solutions account executive, which means I do a lot more customer facing kind of sales type work. But I love figuring out how technology can solve problems. And that's really what we're trying to do here. How we get technology to solve problems or help us be more adapted to the way people want to interact with us today. So on that note, let's talk a little bit about what it looks like today. And this was it came from a report back in 2017, but the reality is since then, everything has gotten turned even more towards this comment, which is each time a consumer is exposed to an improved digital experience, of course, that changes their expectations for everywhere else. So Amazon, Airbnb, Uber, we're all familiar with these, but as those become more and more user-friendly, people just expect that sort of digital experience everywhere. And I would add, especially this last year with the COVID lockdown, it was like pouring gasoline on this digital transformation fire because everybody was forced to start using these even more than they do now. So I think that really is informing a lot of what we're talking about today is just people are starting to expect it more and more. Now, a bit more specific to this market. We've got a few points here, and really, Gartner predicted that the Internet of Things devices would grow to 25 billion by 2021. And if you've never heard of the Internet of Things, it's just everything connected to the Internet. The Internet started and it was just about computers, but now our cell phones and our vehicles and our thermostats and our refrigerators, so many things are connected to the internet, and it's growing and growing and growing. And I would even add that since then, actually Cisco said by the end of 2021, they think it's going to be 27.1 billion. So it's just an incredibly connected world. Now, the next comment about changing demographics, we're looking at a pretty unique time in history when there are 3 generations in the workforce at the same time. And they are 3 generations that consume information in vastly very different ways. So one of the things that I really enjoy, to be honest, is that when I talk about these changing demographics and I work with 95% of what I do is local and county government. But when a clerk, for instance, tells me that they know they're going to retire in a few years and they don't want to leave an old system for the next person that maybe that next person isn't ready for. So they want to go ahead and at least start digitizing and start that process. To me, that's just a beautiful thing. It's a forward-looking way of understanding what has to be done. And you'll hear me say this probably more than once, but it's not a matter of if these changes are going to happen, it's when. So as we keep going here, the digital transformation, incorporation of ECM, and ECM is electronic content management, into desktop apps. You see the list there. These are familiar, but again, it's just changing the way we work. Regulatory demands. GDPR is a couple of years old now, but the demands of regulation, the audit trails, all of that sort of stuff becomes incredibly important, and really you can't avoid it. And going electronic gives you the capability to really deal with that in a better way. And then last is increasingly cloud first. Now, I know cloud has been a question for some, the security of it, the functionality of it, but the reality is things are moving to the cloud. A lot of locations now are using Office 365, which actually has changed, and it's Microsoft Online. Well, they never install Microsoft Word or Outlook. They just use the online capabilities of a cloud developed system. So again, very mainstream, that's where it's headed, and across the industry, we definitely see that. It's definitely moving that way. And again, not to beat the COVID horse to death, but especially when COVID hit, so much of the cloud first development applications, the ones that were already there, were able to provide better service to their users. Especially in the world of work, people could just work from home because they could log in from anywhere. It wasn't tied to being in an office. All right, so as we get a bit more into the high-level overview of the roadmap, I wanted to share this. We call it the digital transformation model. And in this model, it's really just a step-by-step process of how you move from paper to a fully automated system. Some of you are probably already somewhere on this model, the transformation model, but it shows 5 little steps, which is digitize documents, organize the documents, and then automate processes, streamline those processes, and then transform those processes. Really what this is all about, steps 1 and 2 kind of go together, steps 4 and 5 kind of go together. And really what it is, we need to capture and organize information. We want to automate things for better efficiency. And then we want to, in steps 4 and 5, really focus on understanding that the change management is never over. How can we make the process better? How can we go back and change something that in our policies has changed? How can we make things continually improve? So let's look a bit more detailed at some of these steps, again, at a very high level. So the first thing, as you can see in the top right, I put in there, digitize and organize documents. When it comes to that, some people will call it a digital mailroom, some will just call it their scanning room. And really the concept is the same. You can use a scanning system or a digital mailroom as much or as little as you want. But the bottom line is you want to convert all streams of data into digital information. And you'll hear me continually say that, all streams of data. And you see they're listed, email, fax, paper. It's multiple things we want to digitize. And so how it works, more of an example, I guess. Invoices. Instead of just sending the physical mail to the finance team, maybe you would have the mailroom open up the invoice, open the letter, scan the invoice, and then that invoice is already digital. Anything that has to be done with it is no longer paper moving around an office. It is just a digital version of the same thing, that piece of paper, but you don't have to reprint it. You don't have to send it through interoffice mail. It's just there and ready to be used. And we'll talk more about an invoice type process in a moment. But the same with maybe records management. In the records management world, depending on what industry you're in, and I mentioned I deal a lot with government, email can be FOIA-able, open records requests. So having a structured method to capture even email, instead of leaving it in each person's individual email account, maybe we want a structured way to capture email to put into a records retention area. And again, fax, phone calls, like anything that you need to capture, potentially it works better if you have a single point of capture. So scanning machine, the digital mailroom. And again, as we look over there on the right side, the benefits, you can read through those, and obviously it's going to reduce the cost and time if you've got one person just getting it done and putting it right in front of whoever needs the information. We no longer have to walk it to their desk. Automation, tracking, all of those things are immense benefits. So the next step would be not just scanning, capturing that information, but we talked about automation, so workflow automation services. And what you see here is, and I'll go back to that invoice thing that I was talking about. Well, maybe instead of just opening the letter, put an envelope, putting that invoice, scanning it in, maybe as soon as we scan it, our system knows via some automation that this goes to the finance team. Or maybe we bypass the finance team and we send it directly to the department head that needs to approve that invoice. And the automation allows them to stamp on their signature and send it right back to the finance team for payment. Those are the types of automation that take capturing information, turning it digital, and kind of supercharge it. So automation services are vast. They can be department specific. They can be across the entire, enterprise. Whoever needs access to information, once it's digitized, this being one of the key factors, we break down those information silos and make that information available to the right person at the right time. Now, I mentioned departments because a lot of automation software is department specific. And those are great. They're usually a bit quicker to spin up. They're just, you start them, you configure them, they're ready to go. But there are also systems that approach the entire enterprise, and one piece of software might be able to work for every department. Regardless, this is automation really, when we look over there at the benefits, again, it's about, to boil it down, saving time, making things easier, making them nicer for the end user or the customer that we're servicing, whether that customer is a paying customer or a constituent. It's really about automating and making things really flow and track well. And if you remember, I mentioned regulations. There's a customer that it's a city, but they set up a system to allow the marijuana industry, people need to apply for a license. Well, that application usually results in 3 to 6 inch binder fulls of documentation. And using this type of system and automation, they're able to instantly capture all of that information. They no longer reprinted it, which it has to go to many departments for approval. So they save on printing 6 inches of documentation and sending 5 different places. And one of the kind of hidden savings was that there's litigation. When someone gets denied a license to sell medical marijuana, they need to really have incredibly detailed information as to why they were denied. And this type of automated system, with all of the tracking, all of that regulatory compliance, they were able to instantly show to a judge, here's why they were denied, here's the steps that were taken, and it helped immensely. So again, this is all about automation services at kind of a high level. And then the last high level thing that I wanted to mention was artificial intelligence and robotic process automation. Now, for those of you who may be just starting this journey, this might sound way beyond what we should be talking about today. However, this is part of that automate process, and it's not quite as high tech as you may think, but it's useful in everyday situations. So robotic process automation, in general, all it does is takes mundane, boring activities that a human might have done and turns it into an automated process. So an example of this is, I work with a county health agency who part of what they do is they test water supplies near the Great Lakes. They grab the information from a lab report, and what used to happen was they then manually had to type in the information off the lab report into a state-run website. We set up a robotic process automation that captures that lab report, finds the data that it needs to put into the state system, and then automatically puts it into the state system. This was a 7 to 8 hour per week job that we reduced down to 1 to 2 hours. So again, it started with capturing those lab reports digitally. When we capture the data digitally first, we go paperless, all of a sudden we can grab information off that paper and make it useful down the road. So those were a couple of slides about kind of very high level what could happen, but really it comes down to, from understanding the high level, what are practical steps forward? Maybe some of you are asking, what can I do to move forward? And I hope you are, because the first thing, let's go back to the basics. And this is where we'll really get into the meat, which is image and content processing. And I say content processing because most of us think about this process as we're gonna scan paper and make it a digital version. But you can capture, and you see them listed there, PDF, fax, email, even video and audio files can be captured and used in digital situations. And what you're capturing really does matter. Like, I would actually think you want to look about where you're going to be storing these things as one of the major questions, which we're getting into questions here in just a moment. But if you're going to scan documents in and they're just going on your server and you're going to find them through Windows Explorer, that's probably going to be a bit different process than if you're going to use something like Dropbox or OneDrive or even a document management system. So I'm kind of saying these in order, but the step up to a document management software really does allow more control and tools of documents. It helps with organization and usually a much better search capability. You see there in the second point of how it works, OCR is optical character recognition, where we turn an entire document into a text searchable piece of data. So I can search for any word within that document. And that's more when you get into the document management systems. And then that final level is what I've mentioned before, electronic content management. And those are like document management systems on steroids. It gives you all that capability to manage your content, but usually then adds in the automation capabilities that I was just mentioning. So capturing information is incredibly important. How we do that, obviously the noted ones usually are the scanners and scanning documents in, but also the video, audio, email, etc. They're, depending on your specific situation, how we capture things would really come down to very specific. So that's easier talked about on a one-by-one basis. But the benefits, I mean, if you get things digital, now all of a sudden it's very easy to have proper backups, not have to worry about water and fire damage, enabling some of that automation that we just mentioned, speeding up processing documents. There's a reason why all banks are online now, why your insurance company has the ability to process documents with an online signature. It speeds things up. It reduces costs. If you can automate things, less human labor. It's a no-brainer. So within image and content processing, what we have to ask is, how do I get started? And a few questions to look at here. Obviously, number one, what am I scanning or capturing? What is the things that I'm trying to get? And that determines what pieces of equipment you may need to get. Where am I scanning to? This is, again, I just mentioned it, but this is a lot about, are you just going to your network server? Are you going into a document management type system? So the other thing I would caution, where am I scanning to? If you're going to be going to a cloud-based system versus an on-premise system, then you may want to ask some questions about video. Video takes up huge amounts of space. I work with some policing agencies. Some are able to store in a cloud system. Some have their on-site servers, because it really does come down to a cost of, is it more cost effective and better to save this to a cloud or an on-premise system? So that's a really important question. Is there a specific department I want to start with? Now, this might seem like a strange question, but nobody likes change. And when we think about implementing a change like this, it is a big change. For someone who's always used paper, getting them to change is a big deal. But within specific departments, what I usually counsel is, let's find a department that knows they need the change, and we can find one or two things that are going to be really big, quick wins. That way, from a change management perspective, we're able to build excitement. People see something that works and they like it, and then that excitement spreads to other departments. I have actually been part of projects where once you get going and the excitement builds, some of the other departments ask, hey, why wasn't I involved? Or when is mine coming? Instead of, oh no, when do we have to do that? So planning ahead, asking some of these questions is really important. And I'm not going to go through every question here, but a couple that I do think are important. Let's see, how will the data be used? Again, this goes back to, are we going to use some automation? If we're using automation, we definitely want to make sure we're capturing it and digitizing it, using it correctly, so that we can, be able to use it in a bunch of different ways down the road. The last one I want to point out on this particular screen is, do I use a third-party scanning company or purchase tools to do the scanning yourself? Third-party scanners are definitely a cost, but what a lot of people don't think about, and they're good things to think about ahead of time, those third-party scanners aren't just putting a bunch of papers into a big scanner and hitting scan. If you're going to do it yourself, think about the time that's going to take to remove staples, paper clips, sticky notes, fold over any curled up edges. There's a lot that does go into that. So think about that amount of time that you may need to have someone doing that. Also, if you do use a third party, how are they capturing it, and how will it be brought into your document management or electronic content management system? If you have a party, for me, I sell this software. Whenever one of my customers talks about going to a third-party scanner, that's great. I just ask that we have a meeting, all three of us together, because we want to make sure they're scanning and giving us back information in a way that makes it easily ingested into the system and doesn't cause extra costs later on. So that is really that first step, imaging content processing. And now to talk just a little bit about that automation, the electronic content management, a couple of things to look at and what some of those benefits are. So first, again, you can read through all of these, but I think some of the ones to point out, features to look for, cloud or on-premise, quite often comes down to security, but also what information do you want to store? How much does it cost to store it in the cloud versus on-premise? You're paying for your own servers, and it's a cost either way. It's just deciding what works for you. But cloud or on-premise kind of goes right with the next one. And it says user, file, and task management. However, what we're really talking about there is what is the security level you need? Depending on the organization, you're going to have security requirements. I do work with some policing agencies I mentioned where there's some FBI regulations about what you do with criminal information. And so that has to be followed. Maybe a cloud system can or can't do that. We look down, document lifecycle management. For records management people, this is huge. Tools that give you very easy and quick ability to manage that document lifecycle, to deal with the records retention capabilities. Make sure your system has something like that. And of course, if you want to move into the automation like we talked about, or I've mentioned some of them, just make sure that you're looking for a system that it's easy to implement new automation. Some systems are very complex, some are easy, so just make sure you're comfortable with what it's like to do that. Now, again, on the benefits, I'm not necessarily going to mention every single benefit there because a lot of them are pretty obvious. What I will say is this. When I work with a customer, one of the things that I say is, if we're automating and we're going digital, if this doesn't make your life easier, then we're doing something wrong. So again, going back to change management and how you get everyone ready to go down this digital road, you've got to help them understand that making someone's life easier doesn't necessarily mean what they're used to or what they're comfortable with. Easier means it takes less time. It's one click instead of walking 3 offices away and doing something there manually. So we talk a lot about if it doesn't make your life easier, we're doing something wrong. But if we are making your life easier, then this is probably worth looking at. So those are the benefits, and you can read some of those benefits there, but bottom line, it has to make your life easier. And so let's get into some of the detailed questions to consider. If you do want to go down this road and get into more content, electronic content management, which I relate a lot to the automation of processes, there's some questions there that you can certainly ask yourself and ask the people around you. I'll highlight a few of those, but do you want cloud-based or on-premise? Again, we've kind of mentioned this, but that is a big question. As I mentioned, a lot of software now is getting more focused on developing the cloud first. So there are a lot of options that weren't even out there, 1 or 2 years ago. Things are really moving fast on the cloud side. So I'd encourage you to at least look into it. We mentioned security requirements. That is going to be huge. Always make sure that the system can do the security. And then we really focus on integrations. So what existing software do you need to integrate with? There's no document management or automation software that's going to be able to do everything you need it to do. Is it able to seamlessly integrate with things like your financial system or a GIS type system or whatever the case may be? Can it integrate with your existing information or software? Existing processes that could that each department could automate, I like to ask this up front. It builds a little excitement. And when you ask departments, what could we automate? It can be something as simple as a garage sale permit or a time off request for HR, or it can be as complex. I mentioned an invoice approval process, but I've built processes that start with the requisition and go through a PO approval, and then the purchase, and then the invoice comes and it goes through its approval again, and finally someone cuts the check. We can automate extremely complex, but also incredibly simple processes. And instead of asking what they think they could automate, one of the questions I like to ask is, what is a process that everyone at the company just can't stand? It never works efficiently, it's not fast. Where is the pain point? And that will give you another great place to look for, what it is that's going to happen. Pre-built modules, things like contract management or a records retention system, open records request. If they have modules that are pre-built, that's just going to cut down on your implementation time. Mobile, if you need mobile or not. And then the last one that I think is always incredibly important, or the one I like to focus on, is how easy is this to learn or train our employees? So ease of use or ease of catching on, again, goes back to change management, which really kind of goes with that last point there. How can I prepare the team? Change management is so important. You've got to manage expectations in a major shift in how people function and do their work. So those are some great questions to consider, and I'm pretty sure those will be available if anybody wants to reach out. But let's kind of finish up here looking at a couple things. What does this mean? So the last one, not the last, but looking at what we looked at earlier, the explosive growth in mobile devices, the Internet of Things. We want to just be able to use any technology to make things better. And technology is changing drastically fast in the world of document management, records retention. Let's use whatever technology is out there. With the changing demographics, let's use software to make things fit your environment. This is a roadmap to the paperless office. It's not a cut over on one day and it's over. It's finding a way to allow the different generations to be able to do their work still, but all together. How can you provide options for people that allows everyone to get what they need? Incorporation of ECM, this is just, again, do you have the ability to integrate? Can you make your documents that go digital easily be worked with your existing business systems? And of course, increasing regulatory demands. Every industry has it. An automated system, a document management system, is going to track everything that people do within it. So auditing, we call audit trail, being able to track who did what when is just built in. It's no longer a manual thing. You click a couple buttons and run the report to prove that you are actually being compliant. And of course, cloud first, this again, it comes down to what your requirements are, but there are more and more options out there. And there are even hybrid options that really will suit your requirements. I think the goals really are, in the end, we want to improve employee productivity, and not just productivity, but happiness. Again, when we go back to those generations, the generation that's coming in has always done everything digitally. And when you take that away from them, they're just not happy. This is a way to increase productivity, but also keep them happy. Streamlining business processes is just great. We want to make things more efficient, and by making them more efficient, it's going to help with regulatory compliance. We're going to track everything that's happening. And I think the bottom line, the end here, is improved customer experience. And I mentioned that whether it's a paying customer or a tax-paying customer who's a constituent, we want them to be happy. We want to serve our customers well. We want them to enjoy interacting with us. And moving digital is an incredibly great way to do that. So we're going to open it up for questions, but I did also just want to put up on screen, I would love to connect with you. If you have, I think I mentioned this, but the slides are available. You can certainly reach out to ARMA and get that information. But you also are more than welcome to contact me, and my phone number, my email, and I am on LinkedIn. Would love to talk to you. With that, I will say thank you so much for your attention and your time today. And we're just going to open it up for questions. And I'm not sure, Mark, if you have to, if we're doing this through chat or if it's going to be people can unmute and ask questions. I'm not sure.
There we go. We'll start with just seeing if people want to unmute and ask questions. Everyone is certainly, if you want to, you can go ahead and just put it in the chat box if you find that easier. And we will be putting a recording of this as well as a slideshow, PDF version of some of this as well, all online on our website. And I'll send out that information once it's all available on the website for anyone who might want to review this. So I see some people unmuting. Go ahead if you want to ask a question.
But don't everyone jump in at once.
Here we are. One got into the chat. Who are some of the top players in document management solutions?
Yeah, and I can tell you, again, the world I live in is very government focused. I have some private industry customers as well, but I would say OnBase and Laserfish are the two most common full electronic content management systems. And I do sell Laserfish, just as a disclaimer there. But when you look a little bit down the road, more that are more focused on document management, there are things like M-Files and Square 9. There's a lot of, and Box and Dropbox. Again, each level kind of does something a little bit different. But in that full electronic content management realm, in my world, it's usually OnBase and Laserfish. And I did see someone also asked, what's the best place to start, especially if you don't have a big, quick win? And I think that's really specific to your industry, because it might be that just getting tons of information digital, that's the goal, because you want to free up all that office space. I work with some financial advisors who, up until a year ago, everything was in a file cabinet. And that file cabinet room was massive. I mean, it's a large conference room almost. And that was just dead space for them. So getting everything digital freed up space and obviously made everything searchable. If someone misfiled something, it's no longer missing. You search, and even if it was filed in the wrong place, you can find it. So I think kind of that step 1 and 2, get paper or other things, but we tend to think about paper. Get paper digital, scan it in, get it stored somewhere. And I would even say, Lisa, if you don't have a specific big win, or you don't have this software that we're talking about, I think the software is great because you know how to store immediately for use down the road. But even just getting paper digital onto a computer, onto a server, that helps. because then if you do a year later buy some software, you're going to be able to ingest that stuff first, very, very quickly, as opposed to having to scan everything in. So at the very least, first step, let's just get things turned digital. So hope that helped a little bit on that one. And then someone asked some of the best processes that a municipality can automate to make them run more efficiently. And I mentioned one, something as simple as a garage sale permit. That's a funny one, but I use that one because it's so simple. That in the municipality that I originally worked with on this, they had a piece of paper that people needed to fill out, bring into the office, go through an approval process. And this was a municipality where there was no fee. Like, you needed the garage sale permit to have your garage sale, but there wasn't even a fee. So automating something that simple, now someone fills it out on their phone at home, submit, it gets approved, we automatically email them their certificate. And for the clerk, it was as simple as click a button, I approve, I don't approve, and it's done. That's a process. So think really small processes like that versus the marijuana one, where all this documentation comes in, and then it literally went through 6 different departmental approvals. So, or I've got another one of the, well, let's see, municipality. Quite often they'll automate any business application, permit applications. On the HR front, like I mentioned, you can get real easy, quick wins. And by easy, I mean, with the software I sell, it could be about a 1-hour investment of time to build a time off request. And when the person asks for a day off, it automatically knows who their manager is. It goes to them, the manager clicks yes, and it automatically sends HR the notification to do what they need to do. So very, very wide range of what you could do. What are the best processes? It comes down to what you want to do, but they can be incredibly simple, fast wins, or they can be immensely complex. I mentioned marijuana, but an HR process where we now host our job application online, and built into the process is the entire interview process and doing background checks or personality profile tests, automating all of that. And because we captured all the information when they sent in their application, well, now we can pre-fill out all of their onboarding documents. So the employee manual already has their name and maybe phone number and email, and all they have to do is sign it. A W-2 or other tax forms, we can pre-populate all the information that they gave us. So that's really the thing, is what can we capture? What information can we grab to use it and make things more efficient later? All right, I don't know if anybody, I just kind of rolling along here. If anybody wants to verbally ask a question, please do. There's a question in chat about, can a new document management solution integrate with other systems? And I'm not sure if that means with, like, if you had an old document management you want to convert, which I can answer quickly and just say yes, we've done that. Or if it's, when it says integrate, I kind of mentioned integrations as we went along, but yes, most customers we work with have other systems already in place. And I'll give you an example, finance system. And in Michigan, there's a lot of a product called BS&A, and it has different modules, but a lot of people use it for the municipality's finances. The software that we use has the ability to integrate and store the information out of BS&A, or make things available as such as documents to BS&A or to that financial system. We have a lot of ability to integrate with anything, and it's really a matter of what do you want that integration to do. because there are multiple ways to do integrations. And again, the software that I work with definitely has a lot of those integration capabilities. What you want done is really determines which path to take. All right, how can you justify investing in a DMS document management system when departments want to use their line of business application to store digital images? For instance, storing digital images of invoices in a financial system like SAP. So this is a perfect question, Anne, and I have a couple of responses. So I just mentioned a financial system called BS&A, which similar to SAP. A lot of times those line of business applications aren't great at document management. And what I mean by that is you can store it. So one of the things I run into is that financial system will store an invoice for that vendor, but it's under that invoice screen. And if I wanted to run a search and pull back every invoice that particular with that vendor, and even for the last 2 years, right? I want to pull every invoice from that vendor for the last 2 years, and maybe I want to narrow it down and say, I want all invoices from that vendor in the last 2 years where we purchased a laptop. A lot of those line of business systems, they don't have that type of document management or the search capabilities, whereas a lot of electronic content management systems do. And then the other, when you talk about departments, one of the things that we like to say is there are some very great, and by the way, I'm sorry, let me pause because I do want to say this. Some of those line of business applications like BS&A that I've been talking about, and I'm familiar with SAP, they're really good at what they do, but maybe a document management system is good at a different part, kind of like the example I just said. However, when we talk about multiple departments, one of the things that may not matter to every individual department, but it really matters to IT, when every department has its own different line of business application, that means IT needs to know how to learn and support every single different piece of software. Whereas if you get an electronic content management system, depending on how you use it, it could, and I have seen it, where putting it into a location means you no longer need 6 or 7 of those other applications anymore. So it potentially is saving money. You have one system that can do multiple departments, but where it's necessary, again, going back to that comment I made, if this doesn't make your life easier, then we're doing something wrong. If SAP can do something better than this electronic content management system, then keep it. But find where the strengths and weaknesses are of each, and does the investment actually justify the purchase? And we can help you figure that out too. Again, every location, it's very specific, but I hope that kind of answered it. There was 2 different veins to that, but hopefully that helped. And I don't see any more in the chat box right now, but always willing for people just to unmute and ask a question or throw something else in the chat. And I'll just hang out here for a while in case anybody comes up with another question. And if not, by the way, I appreciate everyone, your time here. I will just say a quick thank you from the entire ARMA organization, but I really appreciate and hope this was beneficial.
I'm not seeing any more questions. Thank you very much, Bryan, for joining us today and allowing us to record this. And we'll get all that information put together and send some links out next week when I have a chance to get everything processed properly. Janice, if you want to unmute, you can close our meeting out. It's about 5 till 2. You're still muted.
Actually, I'm unmuted. Can you hear me now?
Now now it says it's unmuted. Go ahead.
Okay, it was unmuted all along. That's weird. Okay. But anyway, Bryan, that's what I was saying. Thank you for taking the time to present to the ARMA organization this day in January. And your digital transformation model, very informative, very detailed. And just want to skip to, I had taken a lot of notes, but you said one thing at the end that's very, I think, very vital to the industry, not just the ARMA industry, but all industries across, government, private industry, and I think education. The next generation that's already started working, and they will continue to come, they're already they're already savvy with doing everything electronically. And that's, car insurance, home insurance, whatever is out there, as you call, let's think it was the Internet of Things. They are already accessing information that they need, things that they need in their life, for their lifestyle. They're already doing all of this electronically. So we are, for the most part, the company's industry, we're kind of behind. For some of us, we're behind the ball, and we do need to step it up, because the next generation, they don't want to go back to doing something or working in a way they've never worked before. So I thought that was very vital information. We don't think about the next generation coming on working. We're embedded in, us working and how long we have to work until we retire and all that. But there's always the next wave of employees coming in, and they are the digital savvy folks. So very, very timely information. So that's all I have. And I don't know, did you get some more questions? Looks like there's more questions in the chat box. Maybe they're comments.
Yeah, most of those are comments.
Oh, okay.
I think we covered all the questions so far.
Okay. Okay, so that's, again, thank you for presenting to us, Bryan. And that's all I have to say, Mark.
All right.
Thank you.
It brings us up to the hour, 2 minutes before 2 o'clock. So the timing was good for the presentation and answers and questions. So our board meeting starts at 2 o'clock, board meeting, the Columbus chapter board meeting. So unless there's more, we will just keep the lines open up until 2 o'clock. There's still a lot of people that's on the line that have not left.
Yeah.
Okay, so good afternoon to everyone, and look forward to seeing you next month.